Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Before I start, make sure to subscribe because I'm planning on potentially doing a live stream in July of all of the Assassin's Creed games every single day until I finish them, so make sure you subscribe to see that. And with that said, let's get on to the video. So today's video is going to be this post on Reddit that is about Assassin's Creed's future and like a future game that I just saw. It was just posted about half an hour ago by a mod, actually, from the Assassin's Creed Reddit. And Jason Schreier, I guess, had some post on Reset Era to where he basically says that it's funny because in the future of Assassin's Creed, the scope of the game would potentially be infinite, which he's joking about it, which the infinite scope is very real because obviously Valhalla had more landmass than Odyssey whenever it launched, and the DLCs are expanding the game to be so much bigger than any previous Assassin's Creed, and the games just keep getting bigger and bigger. And so a very, very cool thing I would like to see, and that's being brought up in this post, is actually having the Mongol Empire, which we haven't had a Mongol Empire game for Assassin's Creed, at least any of the main games or anything. And it would be very cool because it's obviously an insanely huge empire that covers literally all the way from, like, not necessarily Siberia, but the far eastern parts of Russia all the way to Eastern Europe, which is thousands of miles, which obviously they're not going to be able to do that huge of a scope, but they could definitely add that in DLCs to where like the main game's Mongolia and maybe like parts of China and maybe even Korea and like northern Russia, and then they have a DLC that's like set in the Middle East, I guess, to where it's like Iran and Iraq and even Asia Minor and also Eastern Europe. So there's a lot of choices they have, and it would be very cool to see because the Mongol Empire was so big that they can make the game even bigger, because Ubisoft is obviously trying to make even bigger games, and they're also trying to make sure that there's a lot of replayability and they get as much money as possible so they could add a crap ton of DLCs to this game. And since it would be it would be probably the first game that is going to be specifically on next-gen consoles, as in PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox One X, they could definitely make the game so much better than like Valhalla in terms of the, I guess, physics and the graphics and gameplay overall, since it would be specifically for the new consoles and not to where it's able to be played on multiple, to where it's like they have to optimize it for all. Instead, they can optimize it for specific consoles, and then obviously PC, which is what I play on. So I think that's definitely very interesting, and there's been talks about Ubisoft basically wanting to have like bigger games, obviously, like I said, and there's been like concept art for China and things, which we already have a China game, but it's just the China Chronicles. But to have like a main China game would be cool, or it could just transition into a Mongolia game, because Mongolia is not too different from China, at least northern China, and then they obviously took over like the entirety of China, so that's definitely something they could do. The poster on Reddit even has like the borders for the main game, and then also for all of the DLCs that they can include. And the borders for the main game is like half of Mongolia, all of eastern China, and then a tiny little bit of eastern Russia, which I can definitely see that being part of the main game, but I think it would probably be a little bit bigger than that, probably including like all of Mongolia, I would say. And then they have DLCs for Korea, Japan, for the Philippines, for Taiwan, for Indonesia, India, Nepal / Tibet / Bhutan, Kazakhstan, Eastern Europe, as in like their graph shows like Russia, just like around Moscow and St. Petersburg and stuff, and Iran and the Caucasus. So literally there's so many different options they have for DLCs and things, and they could continue just building off of the game and having that game last for such a long time. Or they could have like, I definitely think the game could last like 3 years of DLC content, as long as it's a good enough game and they can expand upon it and make sure it's fresh new content and such, which I definitely think they could do if they have such different environments, since the Mongol Empire was so huge at its extent in 1279. So I definitely think that that would be a very good thing they could do, and I think that this poster, which is, like I said, a moderator for the Assassin's Creed Reddit, is very spot on with what they're thinking, and I think that they're definitely trying to move out of Europe because we've had so many European games. We've had 3 Italy games, we've had a Greece game, we've had I guess it's not necessarily Europe, but we've had the Holy Land, and we've had England, obviously, and France. So we've had a ton of different games set throughout Europe, and I think that we definitely need to have some games set somewhere else. And people have talked about having like Aztec Empire / Mayan Empire, whatever it happens to be, some Native American empire game, which I definitely can find there to be a lot of appeal in that. I just don't think that Ubisoft will go to that, at least yet, because it's something that's more niche and not as mainstream popularized, I guess, as more of the European games. Because honestly, if somebody had to choose, would you rather have a game set in Italy or Greece or England, or would you rather have a game set in the Aztec / Mayan Empire, as in somebody who's just a normal gamer? Which I definitely think they would want to choose somewhere in Europe rather than that. That's just my opinion. That's just what I have to say. I would definitely love a game set somewhere in Mesoamerica, but I think that just from a standpoint from Ubisoft trying to make as much money as possible and trying to reach out to as many people as possible, they won't necessarily do that, at least yet. And so I think the next step would definitely be Asia, because I don't think they're going to do an Africa game, at least anytime soon, which obviously they do have Origins, but I'm talking about like sub-Saharan Africa. And with that said, I definitely think that Asia, like I said, is the next step. And having a Japan game doesn't make a ton of sense since there's been some recent Japan games made, and I think it's going to oversaturate the market and not sell as well, which obviously people have been wanting a Japan game forever. But I think the Mongol Empire would be a perfect game, especially considering they're trying to make all these big maps and long DLCs and make as much money as possible. So that's really it for this video. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think we're going to have it set in Mongolia as the next game? Which obviously we have at Valhalla's Year 2 Season Pass, so I think that it would be a good move from Ubisoft to change the scenery, go out of Europe, and also be able to make as much money as possible by having such a large map for the base game, and for having such a large map for multiple DLCs that can be extended upon. So that is just my thoughts. Like I said, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think we're going to be getting potentially like a gap year after the Year 2 Season Pass, to where we'll have, I guess, 3 years of no game? Well, is it 3 years? Yeah, it's 3 years, to where we have Valhalla that came out in 2020, and then we'll have the next game coming out in 2023. That's potentially going to happen. I'd say it could, just depending on how Valhalla's DLCs do and how well Ubisoft is going to be able to work on the next game. I forgot which company is probably going to be working on it. It might even be Quebec, whoever made Odyssey. I think they're going to be the ones working on it, which I'm not too hyped for, honestly, but I think that it's a very high likely chance, just based upon like the rotation of the studios. I know that they go from one studio to another in terms of rotation, so that they can come out with yearly or bi-yearly game releases for Assassin's Creed. So obviously anything can happen, and there's been 0 actual like substantial leaks for the next game, and we still have the rest of this year for the Paris DLC for Valhalla, and then we have next year's DLCs, which are probably going to be within the Norse realm. But it would be cool to see like other areas of, I guess, real modern, well, not modern time, but the year 800 time of Assassin's Creed, because I definitely have a feeling that these are just gonna be in the Norse realms, where it's like mythology based DLCs, and I don't necessarily think we're gonna get any like real world Earth DLCs coming up for Valhalla. That's just my opinion, but if we do have them, I would definitely want to see potentially Constantinople again, because it's been talked about, and that's, I believe, where Basim and Hytham came from. I'm not positive, but I think that was where they had come from. And I know Vikings had been there all the time and were even hired by the Byzantine emperors at the time by being mercenaries for them. And so that's just my thoughts on that. And like I said, I want to know what you guys think. What do you think is going to happen for the next Assassin's Creed? I think the Mongolian Empire, at least in the year like 1279, like this person has posted, is definitely a good era because there's so many things Ubisoft can do and there's so much room for creativity. And it can be the biggest game potentially Ubisoft has ever made if they actually go with this idea. So that's it for this video. Like I said, I'm planning on doing a stream sometime in July for the Assassin's Creed games. I'm not having it set in stone yet, but make sure you subscribe for that and like the video and tell me what you think about this video, as in what do you think we're going to get. And with that said, thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video.